The great hall of the Valeri Empire was silent. The human, Ethan, was led into a private wing of the palace. The walls glowed faintly and soft pools of light hovered near the floor. Guards watched his every step, ready to intervene if he tried to escape. Yet Ethan did not try. He knew escape was impossible, at least not yet. The girl he had chosen, plain, quiet, and terrified, was already waiting. She had been brought here moments before him. Her shoulders were hunched as if the weight of the entire universe pressed down on her. Her hair fell in simple strands, not like the intricate, shining crowns her sisters wore. She had no jewels, no weapons, no aura of power. She was ordinary. When their eyes met, she froze. Fear and confusion swirled in her gaze. Ethan stepped closer. His presence was small, human-sized, but somehow it carried more warmth than the entire cold hall of the Valeri. I don't know what to do," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You don't have to do anything," Ethan said softly. "I chose you, remember, not because of power or beauty, but because you are real. You see me as a person." She blinked. No one had ever said that to her. Not her sisters, not her mother, not anyone in the court. Her life had been filled with expectation and neglect, glory she could not reach, and attention she did not deserve. She had been invisible until now. Ethan smiled faintly. "I am not here to take from you. I just want to walk beside you. That's all I ask." She shook her head, tears gathering. "I am nothing. I am weak. My sisters, they would never let this be. You're risking everything." "I've risked everything by surviving this long," Ethan replied. "And I choose you anyway. That is my choice, and it is mine alone." For a long time, they simply looked at each other. Neither spoke. The guards outside shifted nervously, unsure if the human would speak out or act in rebellion. Slowly, the girl's hands unclenched. She stepped closer to him, almost instinctively. Her body was trembling, but there was a spark in her eyes now, something that had been hidden for years. Something sharp, something brave. What is your name?" she asked softly. "Ethan," he said. "Ethan," she repeated, tasting the sound. It felt strange on her tongue. Her own name, Lilara, felt heavier than usual. "I am Lilara," she said at last. Ethan nodded. "It's nice to meet you, Lilara." For the first time in her life, someone looked at her and smiled. Not out of duty, not out of fear, but because they genuinely cared. She wanted to say something, but no words came. Instead, she reached out, her small hand brushing against his. The touch was brief, hesitant, yet it carried warmth that neither the cold palace walls nor the harsh light of her mother could erase. Over the following days, Ethan and Lilara were forced to live in the palace together. They ate in silence. They walked the gardens where alien plants glowed with strange colors and moved like they were alive. They spoke sparingly, for every word was watched, measured, and noted by hidden eyes. Yet each quiet conversation, each glance shared in secret, stitched something new between them. Lilara began to understand something. She was weak by the standards of her family. She could not fight. She could not command. She was plain, powerless, and overlooked. But Ethan did not care. He saw her as more than her weakness. He saw her mind, her heart, her courage, even if she had never believed it herself. One evening, as they walked past a balcony that overlooked the city of the Valeri, Lilara whispered, "I have never felt like I mattered." Ethan stopped and turned to her. "You matter, you always mattered, you just never had someone to see it." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She wanted to run, to hide, to disappear. But instead, she leaned on him slightly, allowing herself to be supported for the first time in her life. That night, Lilara could not sleep. She lay in her small room, staring at the glowing ceiling, thinking of the human who had chosen her. A human who had nothing to gain from her, nothing to gain from this arrangement, and yet had risked everything to stand by her. For the first time, she felt something that went beyond fear and duty. She felt hope. Ethan, too, lay awake. He thought of the choices he had made, every human he had lost, every city destroyed, every life erased. And yet here he was alive, here he was with Lilara. She was small, fragile, plain, but in that plainness he saw something the Valeri had never learned to see, true courage, true humanity. And as the night stretched on, both of them realized a quiet truth. The world had changed. The war was not over. The Valeri thought they had won. They thought humans were finished. But one human and one girl no one loved could change everything. Days passed in the Velari Palace like slow-moving shadows. Every corridor shimmered with alien light, every door led to whispers, and every glance was a test. Ethan and Lilara stayed together as much as they were allowed. Guards followed them, observers watched them, and the Queen's eyes always seemed to be everywhere. Lilara still trembled at the smallest sound. Her sister's laughter echoed through the halls, cruel and sharp, a constant reminder that she did not belong. Yet beside Ethan, she felt different. She felt a strange strength she had never known. It began quietly. One afternoon, while walking through a courtyard filled with glowing plants that pulsed with soft light, Lilara noticed a small group of soldiers practicing combat. She stopped to watch. The movements, the precision, the controlled power, it should have intimidated her. Normally it would have, but instead she felt something stir inside her. Ethan noticed her staring. "Do you want to try?" he asked, half joking. Lilara shook her head. "No, I can't fight. I've never fought anyone in my life." "You're not ordinary," Ethan said gently. "I can see it." She laughed bitterly. "Ordinary is all I am, weak, plain, invisible." But later that evening, in the quiet of her room, she could not stop thinking about what Ethan had said. And when the guards were distracted, when no one was watching, she touched the small crystal on her necklace. A simple thing she had worn all her life, passed down from her mother before it became clear she was the least favored daughter. The crystal glowed softly in her hand, and then the air around her shimmered, bending slightly. Lilara gasped. It was the first time she had ever felt it. The power was subtle, almost invisible, but it was there. She could feel the energy respond to her will, small things moving when she focused. A flower leaned toward her. A candle flickered with her thoughts. Ethan, standing at the doorway, had seen it. He had not gasped. He had only smiled. "I told you," he said quietly. "You're not ordinary, you never were." Lilara's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know I could do that. No one ever taught me. No one ever believed in me." "That's because they were too afraid," Ethan said. "But I'm not afraid, and I won't let them make you afraid either." Over the next days, Lilara began to test her small powers. Nothing large or destructive, just tiny movements, tiny shifts, but enough to make her notice her own potential. Ethan encouraged her, and with every success, her confidence grew. She still trembled in front of her sisters, still flinched when nobles stared, but inside she felt a spark that no one could extinguish. One evening, as they walked through the palace gardens, Lilara spoke softly. Do you think I could ever matter to them, to the court?" Ethan shook his head gently. "Not yet. The Velari don't know what they are looking at. They think strength is only muscles, crowns, and glowing power. They don't understand courage, they don't understand heart. That's why they never saw you. That's why they never saw humanity." Lilara reached for his hand, holding it tightly. She felt warmth and protection in a world built for fear. "You believe in me," she whispered. "I always have," Ethan said. That night the first real test came. Her sisters had caught a glimpse of her practicing. They laughed, cruel and loud, mocking her. "What is she doing?" one said. "Pretending to be strong, she will never be anything." Lilara froze, but Ethan stood beside her, hand on her shoulder. "Ignore them," he said firmly. "They do not decide your worth, you do." For the first time, Lilara lifted her chin. The air around her shimmered faintly. Her sister's laughter faltered for a moment, just a flicker before it vanished. No one expected it. No one understood it. Ethan's heart swelled. This small, quiet girl, the one everyone had ignored, the one everyone had underestimated, was beginning to awaken. And the Velari Empire, so confident in their power, had no idea what they had chosen. Lilara's eyes met Ethan. "I want to be more," she whispered. "I want to prove them wrong for you, for me." Ethan nodded. "Then we will together." In that quiet palace, under alien stars and centuries of oppression, two unlikely allies began to forge a bond stronger than any crown, any army, or any throne. They were small, they were underestimated, they were to everyone else weak. But humanity had a way of surprising the universe. And Lilara, the girl no one loved, was about to show the galaxy that sometimes the plainest face hides the sharpest edge. The palace was buzzing with whispers the next morning. News spread quickly among the Valeri nobles. The human had chosen Lilara, the weakest daughter. The queen's displeasure hung in the air like a storm cloud. Guards watched them closely, waiting for orders. Lilara could feel the judgment in every glance, the silent mockery in every whispered conversation. Ethan took her hand as they walked through the grand corridors. "Ignore them," he said quietly. "Their opinion does not matter, yours does." Lilara tried to nod, but her stomach churned. Fear had become a familiar companion. For years, she had lived in the shadow of her sister's greatness. She had learned to shrink, to hide, to hope no one noticed her mistakes. But now she had been forced into the open, and the court was watching. The first challenge came in the form of the trial of worth, a public display designed to humiliate anyone the queen disapproved of. The human and Lilara were to face a series of tests, not of strength, but of intelligence, strategy, and adaptability. Everyone assumed the outcome was already decided. Lilara would fail, and Ethan would be shamed for his choice. The first test was simple on the surface. A puzzle, a giant cube of shifting light patterns. Her sisters approached it confidently, their hands moving with skill and precision. Ethan watched as Lilara hesitated. Her fingers hovered over the glowing panels, unsure. Her heart raced. The court began murmuring, whispering that the plain daughter would embarrass herself, that the human had chosen poorly. Ethan whispered, "You can do this, trust yourself." Lilara closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and let her mind clear. She remembered the subtle powers she had felt growing inside her, tiny movements, tiny shifts in the world. Her hand moved instinctively, almost as if guided by something beyond herself. The cube began to shift and click under her touch. Colors aligned. Patterns emerged. Slowly, methodically, the puzzle solved itself. A hush fell over the court. The nobles' expressions flickered from amusement to confusion. Her sisters froze, mouths open in disbelief. Lilara opened her eyes and saw Ethan watching her with a proud, quiet smile. The second challenge came immediately, a test of endurance. The contestants were sent into a chamber filled with shifting gravity fields. The goal was to retrieve a glowing crystal from the center. Her sisters leaped, twisted, and floated with ease. Lilara felt panic rise. She was weak. Her body was small. Her muscles could not compete. But then she remembered Ethan's words, "Trust yourself." And she realized she did not have to rely on her body alone. She focused. Slowly, the gravity shifted in her favor. She felt it bend around her, respond to her will. Step by step, she moved toward the crystal, her feet barely touching the ground, her hands steady. When she held it in her hands, the chamber erupted with sound, not laughter but shocked silence. The court had not expected her to succeed. The queen's gaze burned like ice. Ethan's eyes met hers, full of pride. Lilara felt something she had never felt before, power, real power. The final test was the cruelest, a mental duel against her strongest sister. The Valeri used psychic energy to challenge the mind, probing memories, fears, and weaknesses. Her sister sneered, confident, almost mocking. Lilara closed her eyes and focused on the one thing the Valeri could never predict, her humanity, her memories of survival, of loss, of fighting to stay alive when everyone else had fallen, her love and trust in Ethan. The duel began. Lilara felt the probing tendrils of her sister's mind, sharp and cold. But she did not resist. She did not struggle. She let the truth of herself shine, and in that light her sister's attacks faltered. For the first time, the court saw that weakness was not always weakness, that courage, clarity, and humanity could be stronger than muscle or psychic talent. When the trial ended, Lilara stood trembling but victorious. Her sisters were silent. The court buzzed with disbelief. The queen's face was unreadable, a mask of fury and intrigue. Ethan stepped beside Lilara, holding her hand firmly. "You see," he whispered, "they thought you were weak, they thought you would fail, but you are more than they can imagine." Lilara's lips trembled, tears forming. I didn't think I could do it." "You did," Ethan said, voice steady. "Because you are not ordinary, you are human, and humans, we survive even when no one believes we can." For the first time in her life, Lilara understood the truth of her choice. Strength was not always visible. Power was not always obvious. The world had underestimated them, underestimated humanity. And together, she and Ethan were about to show that even the smallest, plainest human could challenge empires. The victory in the trial of worth had changed everything. The Velari court could no longer ignore Lilara, nor could they dismiss Ethan. Whispers followed them everywhere, sharp and venomous, but full of curiosity. Many nobles had begun to fear the consequences of underestimating the human and his plain, quiet companion. Lilara could feel the eyes on her constantly, but she no longer flinched. She walked with a new sense of purpose, her hand always resting in Ethan's, drawing strength from his quiet confidence. Together they were small, but together they were dangerous in ways the Velari did not understand. That night in their private chamber, Lilara could not stop thinking about the court's reaction. "They hate me," she said softly, her voice trembling. "Every one of them hates me." Ethan smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yes, they do, but not for the reason you think. They hate you because you proved them wrong. They fear what you are capable of, and that is exactly why we have to be careful and clever." Lilara nodded slowly. "I want to be clever. I want to show them that I am not just the weakest." Ethan took her hand firmly. "You are not the weakest. You never were. You survived a war no human should have survived. You solved puzzles, outsmarted soldiers, and faced your own fear when no one else believed in you. That is strength no Velari can understand." In the following days, Lilara continued to train in secret. She practiced her subtle abilities, learning to manipulate the world around her, tiny movements that made a difference in unexpected ways. Flowers leaned toward her, doors opened silently at her touch, and even lights flickered in rhythm with her thoughts. Ethan guided her, careful not to push too far, but always encouraging her to trust herself. Yet the Velari were clever too. They began to plot against her, whispering to the queen that the human was corrupting her, that he was teaching her rebellion, that together they were becoming a threat. Lilara could sense it, a cold tension in the air, but for the first time, fear did not rule her. She was no longer alone. She had Ethan. She had someone who believed in her, who stood by her when the world turned its back. One afternoon, a noble approached them in the garden. His eyes glimmered with cruel curiosity. "Tell me, human," he sneered, "how does it feel to train the weakest daughter of the queen? How long before she fails, or worse, before she becomes dangerous to herself and everyone else?" Ethan did not flinch. He looked at Lilara, who met the noble's gaze steadily. She did not tremble, she did not hide. "I do not train her," Ethan said quietly. "I help her discover what she already has, and what she has is more than you can imagine." The noble's face turned red with anger, and he stormed away, muttering insults. Lilara exhaled, realizing she had not felt such pride in herself ever before. For the first time, she was not afraid of others' opinions. She was learning that the Velari's arrogance could be used against them. That evening, Ethan and Lilara walked on a balcony overlooking the glowing city. Stars and lights stretched endlessly around them, but they were focused on each other. Lilara leaned into Ethan's shoulder, feeling the warmth that had always been human but rare in this alien world. "Do you think they will ever stop trying to hurt us?" she asked quietly. "They will try," Ethan said, "and we will have to be ready. But every time they attack, they show us their weaknesses. Every insult, every challenge, every plan they make, it tells us exactly what they fear." Lilara nodded. "I never thought I could be strong, but with you, I feel like I can face anything." Ethan smiled softly. "That's because you can. Humans survive because we fight when we have no choice, because we care more than we are supposed to, because we never give up, even when everything is against us. And you are the perfect example of that." For the first time, Lilara truly believed it. She had been plain, invisible, and weak in the eyes of the Velari. But now she saw her own potential. She saw the way her mind worked, the way her instincts guided her, the quiet strength that no one had ever recognized. And she realized something more. The Velari's greatest mistake was thinking humans could be judged by appearances. The danger was real. The queen was watching. Her sisters were plotting. The court was filled with spies and whispers, but Lilara was no longer afraid. She had Ethan beside her, and together they were ready for whatever the Velari might send next. And deep down, she knew that the plainest daughter in the room, the one everyone had ignored, was about to change the fate of empires. Because the Velari had forgotten one thing: humanity, even when small and weak, could never truly be crushed. The Velari Empire had always prided itself on control. Every noble, every soldier, every citizen knew their place. Power was visible, strength was obvious, and the human, Ethan, and his plain companion, Lilara, were anomalies. The court underestimated them, and they were about to pay for it. It started quietly. The queen summoned them to her chambers under the pretense of reward. Guards lined the halls, their expressions tense. Lilara's hand trembled slightly in Ethan, but he squeezed it gently. "Stay calm, trust yourself," he whispered. The queen's chamber was enormous, glowing with icy light. Her daughters stood to the side, each radiating pride and power. The queen's silver eyes fixed on Ethan, then Lilara. "So," she said slowly, voice smooth like flowing metal, "the human chooses to elevate the weakest. Tell me, do you understand what you have done?" Lilara swallowed hard. I only chose because he saw me as a person." The queen's gaze sharpened. "A person? That is your justification. You claim strength, yet you are nothing. Your human thinks he can teach you greatness, but you are weak. The Empire will not tolerate failure." Ethan stepped forward unafraid. Strength is not always obvious. Sometimes it is quiet, sometimes it is hidden, and sometimes it is human. The queen's lips curved in a cold smile. "We shall see." Her words carried a hidden threat, a test, a challenge designed to crush them. They would face a series of trials in public, overseen by the strongest nobles, each meant to humiliate Lilara and prove Ethan wrong. The first trial was physical. Lilara was forced into the arena with her sisters. The goal was to lift a massive weight, a test she could not possibly win by strength alone. The court murmured, they laughed, expecting failure. Lilara closed her eyes, drew in a deep breath, and focused. She felt her powers stirring inside her, subtle and responsive. The air bent slightly around her. The weight moved, almost as if it were lighter than it should be. Inch by inch, Lilara lifted it, shocking the court. Whispers turned to stunned silence. The second trial tested her mind. The Veleri used their psychic probes to challenge her thoughts, exposing fears and memories, trying to twist them against her. Her sisters sneered, confident in her collapse. But Lilara did not struggle. She held on to Ethan's face in her mind, his voice in her thoughts. And in that moment, her fear transformed into clarity. The probes bent to her calm, and her mind stood firm. The court was shocked. No one had resisted psychic trials without training or power before. Lilara was plain, she was weak, yet she stood taller than anyone in the chamber. The final trial was cruel and direct. The queen herself approached, her energy radiating power that made the walls hum. She aimed to break Lilara's spirit, to humiliate the human beside her, to show the court that weakness would never triumph. Lilara's heart raced, but Ethan stepped close, whispering, "You are not alone, trust what you are, trust us." And Lilara did. She reached deep within herself. Her subtle powers, her human ingenuity, her courage, they all converged. The queen's energy shifted slightly under her focus. The lights flickered. The crystal pillars quivered. The court gasped. Lilara was not just resisting. She was bending the trial, bending the expectations, bending the impossible. When it ended, she stood upright, trembling but unbroken. Ethan held her hand tightly. The queen's expression was unreadable, a mask of fury and intrigue. Her daughters, proud and arrogant, stared at her in disbelief. Lilara's voice was soft but unwavering. "I am not the weakest. I am not invisible. I am human, and humans survive even when the world thinks we cannot." A murmur ran through the court. The queen's gaze lingered on Ethan. "You have chosen wisely or foolishly," she said, her voice low. "We shall see how far your human will take this." Ethan's hand tightened on Lilara. "We will see," he said. For the first time, the court realized they had misjudged the human, and misjudged Lilara. Together, they had turned weakness into strength, fear into courage, and under the cold, judging eyes of the Veleri Empire, the plainest daughter in the room had proven something terrifying. That humans, small and underestimated, could challenge empires in ways the Veleri had never imagined. Lilara looked at Ethan, a spark in her eyes. "We are ready," she whispered. Ethan smiled. "They will learn the hard way." And in the shadows of the palace, a quiet revolution had begun, born from trust, courage, and the human heart. Crystal light flowed across the ceiling like frozen lightning. Thousands of powerful alien nobles filled the massive chamber. Their bodies glowed with colors that hurt human eyes to look at for too long. They were rulers of stars, destroyers of worlds, masters of life and death. And in the middle of all of it stood one small, fragile thing. A human. His name was Ethan. He stood with his hands bound behind his back. His clothes were clean now, but his body still carried the marks of years in chains. Scars crossed his arms. Burn lines ran along his neck. His eyes were tired, but they still held fire. Ethan was the last man taken from Earth. Not the last human alive, but the last one the Veleri kept as proof that humanity was broken. Years ago, the Veleri fleets had come from the dark between stars. Earth's weapons meant nothing to them. Cities fell in minutes. Oceans boiled. Millions died in fire before they ever understood why. Ethan had been a simple worker when the sky burned. He should have died. Instead, he was captured. For years, he worked in silence. He watched his people vanish one by one. Some died of sickness. Some were used for experiments. Some simply gave up. Every day, the guards reminded him of one truth. Humans were weak. Humans were finished. Today was different. Today, he had been washed, dressed in new clothes, brought into the heart of enemy power. At the highest throne sat the Queen of the Veleri. Her form was tall and glowing like living starlight. Her eyes held the calm of someone who had erased planets without losing sleep. She lifted one glowing hand. Human, her voice echoed through the hall, smooth and cold. Your species is defeated, but you live. Ethan said nothing. You will not be executed, she continued. You will be used. The word cut deep. A low sound moved through the crowd. Interest, hunger, curiosity. Then the queen raised her hand again. You will choose one of my daughters. She will become your mate. From you, a new hybrid bloodline will rise. This will be the only future your kind is allowed. Shock ran through the hall. Ethan felt his breath leave his body. This was not mercy. This was ownership. 6 figures stepped forward. They were her daughters. Each one stood tall and powerful. Their bodies shined with royal light. Their eyes were sharp like blades, warriors, rulers, living weapons born into crowns. Each one was terrifyingly beautiful. All except one. She stood slightly behind the others. Her light was dim, her posture unsure. While her sisters stood straight and proud, she held her hands together like she wanted to disappear. Her face was gentle, her eyes soft. She looked ordinary. The queen spoke again. Choose the strongest, she said. Choose the most beautiful, choose the one worthy to carry your blood. The hall waited. Ethan's heart pounded. If he chose one of the powerful ones, he would be controlled forever. Used as breeding stock, a prisoner in a palace. His children would belong to the enemy. He slowly lifted his eyes. He looked at the first 5. They stared at him like hunters looking at meat. Then he looked at the last girl. She did not look at him with pride. She looked at him with fear. And in that moment, Ethan saw himself in her eyes. His decision was already made. He lifted his shaking arm and pointed. Hurt. The hall exploded with sound. Laughter, outrage, whispered insults, shocked gasps. The queen's smile vanished. You choose, she said slowly, the weakest. Yes, Ethan answered. Why, the queen asked. She has no power, no value, no importance. Ethan's voice was quiet, but it carried. Because she is the only one who did not look at me like a thing. Silence fell like a blade. The plain girl's eyes widened, her lips trembled. The queen stared at Ethan for a long moment. Then she laughed. Not with joy, but with cruel amusement. So be it, human, she said. You may have the broken one. Guards moved forward and pulled Ethan away. As they dragged him past her, the girl finally found her voice. I am sorry, she whispered. Ethan met her eyes one last time. For what? He asked softly. For being chosen. He shook his head. No, I am sorry for what they did to you. The guards hauled him out of the hall. Behind him, the nobles laughed. But deep inside the palace, a spark had been lit. The weakest girl in the room was no longer invisible. And the last human had made a choice that would change empires.